Hey everybody, it's Uyak here, back another video. Jesus Christ. This newest episode of Made in Abyss goes into detail of the history of this crew that explored the 6th layer, and let me say right now, this is one of the most disturbing things I have ever seen in anime. I mean, I cannot believe this would be akin to the Berserk anime actually adapting from the manga. I mean, this is crazy with what happens in this episode. But before we get into it, if you do enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for similar content in the future. I actually made a video on the biggest threat in Made in Abyss, and I might need to update that now because this episode opened everything up. Alright, so before I talk about the actual episode, I just want to say that some of the things in this episode are actually truly disturbing. I mean, it makes sense as why Made in Abyss is on High Dive now and not Crunchyroll, because this simply would not pass. Some of the things are so disturbing. So if you're susceptible to disturbing imaging, I just have to say beware, because there is going to be some. Alright, so the last episode ended with Vuako basically sitting down with Riko and about to explain the history of this crew. And this newest episode did not disappoint. We are opened up in this episode with the old crew, with the degenerate crew, with the outcast crew. We are opened up with them, dropping into the 6th layer, so they're just introduced to it, and they come into contact with their interference units. And they're testing things out, like, can they go back up on the ball that they came from? Turns out they can't, and a few of their crew members died. Let's just go past the fact that they just killed some of their crew members for an experiment. But they are introduced into this 6th layer, and obviously, what is one thing that human beings need to do when they first get somewhere new? They need to make a settlement. They need to situate themselves. So this is what that crew establishes. They're establishing a settlement. And in establishing a settlement, what do they need? Food and water. And this is where all the problems start in the episode. I mean, this is absolutely menacing. So the source of food is obviously these terrifying creatures in the 6th layer, but the source of water is a lot more complicated. Because as human beings, they're affected by the curse of the abyss and they can't go up, which leads them only a few options for water, actually 5 options for water. And the issue with 2 of these options of water is that they're surrounded in the territory of terrifying creatures. So if you want to get this water, you're probably going to die. The next body of water has an iron pillar in it, which I'm assuming is rusted, so this makes the water contaminated. You're most likely going to get sick if you drink this water. The 4th body of water is too hot to even go near. I mean, the interference units who are made out of metal or whatever they're made out of can't even go near it. And the 5th body of water. This is the haven they were looking for, a completely untouched body of water. Nothing can go wrong here. Yeah. We're then shown scenes of the crew kind of establishing themselves in the 6th layer. I mean, even in this point of where it's supposed to be happy, let me explain this. So Rumi the child, she finds this little creature in the 6th layer, and it's like a cute little animal that can become a pet, like a bunny. People find it cute. And she makes this her pet, and in these scenes of them showing happiness, kind of their adventures in the 6th layer, they are defending themselves against the terrifying creatures of the 6th layer, and the terrifying creatures can't get any of the humans because they're protected by shields. So what does the creatures do? They single out this small little bunny in Rumi's pocket or hand, I believe, take it and devour it in front of her. I mean, this show leaves absolutely nothing to make it unpleasant for the viewer. They will give this child no sort of happiness at all. Then as they are settling themselves into the 6th layer, they start to notice something. Some things are weird. For instance, Vuako wakes up and Irumyuui is all of a sudden very sick and she has diarrhea. Now let me talk about the questionable decisions of Vuako here. So the first thing she does when she sees that Irumyuui has diarrhea, and put yourself in this perspective. So if you saw someone you cared dearly about, your child for instance, has diarrhea, and you want to figure out how they're sick, what do? You stick your hand in that diarrhea, obviously, because that is the #1 way to examine someone if they're sick and make them better. You stick your hand in it and you put that up to your face, because what sensible human being would not do that? So that's exactly what Vuako does here. And in doing this, she noticed that there's kind of translucent caterpillars, or maggots are probably more accurate with how disgusting the abyss is, in her actual diarrhea that are making her sick. So what is the cause of these maggots? You guessed it, the water. It turns out that this water that they thought was untouched was not actually untouched, because Belaf and their crew go to this water source and they're trying to figure out what exactly this rock is. Come to find out, it's not even a rock. This is a living creature. This is a living creature that is so advanced that it tricks creatures into drinking its water to put their maggots or caterpillars or eggs inside of them. And then it makes them sick and it develops these weird abnormalities. I mean, look at how these people got sick. They're developing new limbs and stuff. Everybody in their crew gets sick, and this is disturbing. This is disturbing. I can't lie. This is disturbing, but this is not the worst of it. So in the middle of this, they find this relic that is egg-shaped, and I don't even know how they figured out the purpose of this relic, because it kind of just seems like they guessed. But essentially what this relic is, it grants the wish of children. It has a high chance to grant the wish of children, because children are less complicated and they're more in touch with their fear. So as everybody in their whole crew is getting sick and such, they turn to giving this relic to Irumyuui. And I forgot to mention this, but in the episode, there's kind of this emphasis on Vueko and Irumyuui's relationship, as to where they're developing a kind of mother-daughter relationship, which is very, very messed up because of the things that happened to them, and they're bonding over this. I mean, Irumyuui says something very disturbing of that. As she was growing up, her brothers treated her extremely well, in fact, unnaturally so much, because she was the only girl in their family. But then once they found out that she can't reproduce, they kind of made her an outcast, which is a lot more disturbing if you think into it. But if you think into it a little bit, I mean, we're going down the straight home Alabama route. Let me just say that. I mean, this is disgusting and disturbing. But they give this relic to Irumyuui as the sole hope. Vueko consults with Wazukan, the prophet in their group, about giving this relic to Irumyuui, and Wazukan puts on the most serious, desperate look. I mean, this guy was down bad in the most truest sense. You could see all his hope despair on his face. This man wanted nothing else but for Irumyuui to take this egg and make a wish for them. So Vueko gives this relic to Irumyuui in order to make her wish. And the very next day, we see Vueko waking up and she sees Irumyuui, except Irumyuui looks drastically different. She's walking around as if she's completely fine, except her left hand is an abnormality. It's disgusting, and she has this relic implanted in the middle of her chest. So now the question becomes, what wish did she make? Because throughout the episode and fairly quickly, we see her devolve into this kind of inhuman form where she's starting to turn into a blob. So you know how I mentioned that Irumyuui has this integral problem in her family, because it's kind of seen in their tribe as if you can't reproduce as a young toddler, which is crazy. That is crazy beyond belief. But if you can't reproduce as a young child, then you're useless. So what does Irumyuui wish for? She wishes for the ability to reproduce. That is right. And I'm not talking about making human children or whatever. This is where it gets utterly actually disturbing. If you thought the sickness was disturbing, this is a level beyond that. The form that Irumyuui is shown as in the actual anime is so disgusting. I mean, she turns in this kind of blob and she's birthing creatures out of her chest area, which thank God they did not show any more into that, because Jesus Christ. But she's birthing these creatures that die after one day. They don't eat, they don't drink, nothing. They're just a living blob that dies after a day. So I guess she got her wish, right? I mean, the abyss is so terrifying that even in granting her wish, it grants her probably the worst possible outcome for her. Even with Irumyuui's wish being made, the problem is still that the crew is dying. All right, her wish didn't grant them a water source. Everybody in the crew is still on the brink of death. So what do? Well, Vueko was about to die, and Wazukan, who's seemingly not affected by this disease at all, which I still don't understand, saves Vueko from the brink of death with this stew of some sort, with this soup of some sort. And Vueko, after she gets better the next morning, kind of wonders, hey, where did you get this from? And this is where the subliminal messaging comes in. If you thought everything before this was bad, let me tell you about the reality if you didn't pick up on it in this episode. What they were referencing on the cliff in the 6th layer was the fact that Wazukan actually cooked these beings that Irumyuui makes into this type of soup and stew and fed it to everyone in order to make them better. That's where the episode ends off, and let me say, the scenery in this episode, the images on screen, disgusting, disturbing. This is the most disturbing history in an anime I've ever seen before. But regardless of all that, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for similar content in the future. I will see you in the next video.